So what do you do when you receive a tender and the tender has been very naughty, as in the tender has been naughty and they've gone over the word count or the page count? What do you do? Interesting. G'day everyone, Simon Zarifa here from Shrewd. We provide commercial support to the Commonwealth to help the Commonwealth successfully deliver value for money projects. So what do? You've gone out with a tender, the tenderer has responded, and you said in your tender document that they were to respond with no more than, say, 50 pages, and they have gone over the 50 pages, or you said no more than 5,000 words, and they've gone over 5,000 words. What do you do? Right, step one is you need to look at the evaluation plan, because your evaluation plan will tell you it should tell you what you can do. Now, generally, the evaluation plan will have mandatory minimums. And what I mean by that is it will have mandatory things that must be included for the tender to be considered. And if they are not in there, or if the tender doesn't comply with those mandatory minimums, then it must be set aside. Now, usually usually the mandatory minimums are things like the tender must be in English. And if it's going to include pricing, which they all do, the prices have to be in Australian dollars. But that last one is actually not always the case. Sometimes you'll accept US dollars or other foreign currencies. But generally, so the most common mandatory minimum is that the tender response must be in English. That's it. Usually that's the only mandatory minimum. So what that means is if a tender is lodged and it's in English, then it must be considered. So because they've met the mandatory minimum in lodging their response, they've just gone over the word count or the page count, you can't automatically exclude them. So all you do is put a line under, or put a line where the excess pages or wording are, or the wording is, and you cannot examine or you cannot evaluate words or pages that are in excess of the page count or the word count. So let's say the tender is 50 pages long. Well, you've asked for the tender to be no more than 50 pages. They lodge a tender that's 60 pages. Then you're not meant to evaluate the last 10 pages. Now, things can get tricky because let's say you say that the tender response can only be 50 pages and they lodge a tender response that's 60 pages, but the first 4 pages are just like a cover page, an index, and a photo. What do you do then? Does that mean that you should look at 4 extra pages at the back of the document because that's the substantive part? So all I'd say there is you just need to be consistent with what you do with all tenderers. So if you decide that the 50 pages kicks in from the first paragraph of the first substantive page, i.e. you're not counting the cover page in the index, then that's fine, but just do that consistently with all tenderers. And so that way you are ensuring a level playing field. And do the same thing with the word count issue as well, obviously. And then the last thing you need to do is you just need to document what you have done and why you have done it, and just keep a record of that so that if ever you get audited or there is some query made as to why you didn't examine certain things, then you have a record as to what you've done. So you can do it, as in you can not look at pages or words that are in excess of your word count or page count requirements. Just document what you do. And actually, just on that, it's always wise to go out, I'm re-emphasizing that, but always have a limit on the number of words or pages, generally pages, that a tenderer can respond with, because it's always easy to write more than it is to write less. And just on that as well, it's always good to specify a minimum font, because you'd be amazed at what creative tenderers can do. I have seen a 50-page response that was in size 8 format because they were only allowed to do 50 pages, and in that tender we didn't specify the minimum font size. That was fun and a valuable lesson. Anyway, there you go. Hope that helps. That's what you do when you have a tender that is in excess of the word count or page count that you've specified, and how you deal with it. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. Simon@shrewd.com.au or 1-800-SHREWD, which is 1-800-747-393. Hope that helps.